All right, let's roll. Good afternoon. I would like to call this meeting of the Oldham County Board of Education to order. It's January 25th, 2021, and we are at the Arvin Education Center. The first item of business is to approve the agenda. Any corrections or additions, Superintendent?
We have an addition to the agenda. If you would look at action items, we're going to add action item H, a calendar change in relation to COVID-19 vaccinations. And that beyond that, that's it.
Thank you, sir. So, motion to approve the agenda, please. Made by Mr. Kehoe and seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor? And that's 4-0. I am going to turn the meeting over to the superintendent temporarily so that we can conduct an election of board officers.
So what I need to do, guys, is to call for a nomination for the chair for this upcoming two-year cycle. I will take nominations for chair. Mr. Woosley?
I nominate Joyce Fletcher for chair.
Is there any other nominations? Mr. Kehoe?
Joyce Fletcher.
Okay, well, we'll take that as a second. Any other, no different nominations, so I need a motion for Joyce Fletcher to be nominated as chair, and that is 3-0, or you're not going to vote? You're not. 4-0.
I guess I'll vote.
All right, so Joyce will serve as chair, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Joyce then to run for vice chair.
And I appreciate your vote of confidence, you all. I always would entertain any board member serving in this position. I would welcome you to do that. So you need to speak up and let us know if you'd like to serve as chair or vice chair, but I appreciate your support. So I need a motion, I need a recommendation, I think, or a motion for a person to serve as vice chair. Mr. Dodson? This is going to be same-o, you all. Mr. Woosley has the nomination. Is there a second for Mr. Woosley? Mr. Kehoe made that. So all those in favor of Kevin serving. It would be a two-year term. The officers serve in two-year increments. So Mr. Woosley, welcome back, sir. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on with the agenda. And I am going to ask, let's ask Mr. Davis to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Davis. We are ready for the instructional session, Superintendent.
All right, I'm going to ask Ms. Stephanie Anderson, our Chief Financial Officer, to come up and introduce our guest for the instructional session this evening.
Good afternoon, Ms. Anderson.
Good afternoon. We have a new set of auditors this year with Barnes & Denning, and so I would like to introduce Daniel DeMonte to give our presentation today.
Welcome, Mr. DeMonte.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. As Ms. Anderson said, my name is Daniel DeMonte. I'm an assurance manager with Barnes Denning & Company. We're obviously very pleased to work with Oldham County Board of Education for their audit this year and hope to continue for the next years to come. You have in front of you a copy of the audited financial statements as well as a presentation. I'm going to go through the presentation as it provides some required communications as well as some financial information. So we communicated in our engagement letter the planned audit scope of an audit of the June 30, 2020 financial statements, as well as a single audit compliance over major federal programs. On the next page, you'll see some auditor management responsibilities. The financial statements are the responsibility of district's management. As the auditors, we provide reasonable but not absolute assurance, and essentially what that means is we do not look at every invoice, we do not look at every timesheet, every transaction. That would not be efficient for our time or the district's time. We do risk-based auditing where we determine areas that have risk within the audited financial statements, and we perform tests around those risky areas to get reasonable assurance. The internal controls are the responsibility of management. As a part of our audit, we get an understanding of the internal controls, but we do not provide any assurance over them. Our audit of the financial statements does not relieve you or management of your responsibilities, and there's further information about the auditor and management responsibilities on the engagement letter. Next page, we have the executive summary. We issued an unmodified, clean opinion on both the financial statements and the major federal program. That is the best opinion that you can receive in an audit. We received excellent cooperation from Stephanie and her staff. Obviously, with the past year and the ongoing pandemic, things changed within the schools with NTI and all that stuff, and it changed for us as well, doing a lot of remote auditing, relying heavily on technology for sharing of information, and I just wanted to thank Ms. Anderson for her efforts and her team's efforts in providing that stuff and cooperating with us to get the audit done. No disagreements or difficulties encountered during the audit, and no consultations with other independent accountants. Significant accounting policies are discussed in Note 1. There was one accounting standard that was adopted in the current year, GASB 84 for fiduciary activities. Essentially, the accounting standard updated the definition of a fiduciary activity, and it changed the way that the school activity funds were presented on the financial statements, so they're in a different spot in the financial statements than they were in previous years. All entities have a sensitive internal accounting estimate for the district that would be depreciable lives of capital assets. No internal control matters are reportable. We are not aware of any matters related to fraud or illegal acts that require communication to you all. And other written communications can be found within the management representation letter for the audit. And another note, there were no significant audit adjustments or uncorrected adjustments due to materiality levels. So the last few slides here are just some graphs of historical information and of the prior audit for 2020. And just, I'll go over some highlights, nothing too in-depth, but if you have questions, obviously feel free to ask. First, we have the statement of net position, trends district-wide. Honestly, pretty consistent among all of the 3 past years. So I'm going to go past that one into the district-wide net position analysis. We have all the different buckets of net position, investment in capital assets. That's your building, vehicles, equipment. Restricted, so funds that are restricted in nature for a future purpose. And then unrestricted, you'll see that's a negative number, and that's because that includes the pension liability and the corresponding deferred inflows and outflows related to those, as well as the other post-employment benefit plan, or OPEB, liability and those corresponding inflows and outflows. So next page, we see the revenue over expenditures for the district-wide. Obviously, you know, we've had revenues exceeding expenditures district-wide for the past 3 years. There's a bit of an increase in 2020 due to an increase in instruction expenses, which is not uncommon amongst other districts that we've worked with for 2020. Next page, we have the balance sheet trends for the general fund. So you have your assets, liabilities, and fund balance. Again, overall pretty consistent. We saw a little bit of a decrease in the assets, and that is related to a little bit of a decrease in cash, which relates to the expenditures exceeding the revenues for the general fund in 2020. And then the liabilities were relatively low compared to the assets. Then on the next page, we have revenues over expenses for the general fund. And as I was saying on the previous page, you see that the expenses shot up over revenues in the current year. And again, that is related to the increase in the instruction expenses. Next page is just really an informational graph of major tax receipts, the major one being general property tax for the county. You'll see that there was an increase from 19 to 20 in general property taxes. Then on the next page, we have general fund revenues by source. So we have taxes in total, as well as state revenues, including and excluding on behalf payments. So you can see the impact of those on behalf revenues. And then down below, we have some earnings on investments, federal revenues, and other revenues, which include revenue in lieu of taxes, some tuition income, bus rentals, and other non-governmental reimbursements. And then the last slide here is revenue over expenses for food service. Obviously, for the past couple years, expenses have exceeded revenues. There is a piece of non-monetary expenses in these expenses, which is included with depreciation over the food service fixed assets, as well as changes in the pension liability and the OPEB liability that is related to the food service fund of the district. So that's all the information I had. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
All right, thank you, Mr. DeMonte. Let me ask if board members have any questions. Mr. Woosley?
Is this the only school district that you audit?
No, we actually audit. This year we had 20 school districts that we were working with.
That you personally have audited?
No, our team, we have multiple teams that work with different districts in the state of Kentucky.
Okay. Are you going to talk about the timing on this?
Yes, unless there are any other questions about the report itself. So our actual deadline for this audit was November 15th, Mr. DeMonte. Any reason why we were delayed till January?
Yeah, so with all the COVID funding coming out in the later part of 2020, or I'm sorry, in I guess springtime and then mid-2020, the federal government was issuing an addendum to a compliance supplement, which is basically, it's a document that we use from the federal government to audit federal programs within different entities. And some of those, obviously, funds were related to schools that receive funding from the federal government. So initially, it was communicated to us, and this was also through KDE, that the addendum, we were not supposed to submit the audit in November if any of the districts that we were working with had funds that were used through those COVID grants or CARES Act money, because there was a potential that we were going to have to look into them in this current year audit. So it was extended from November 15th to December 15th, and we were waiting, everybody was waiting on this compliance supplement to see what we needed to do, or if we needed to do anything really. Then December 15th came, and there was still no addendum, and we were waiting. And a week after the 15th, I think it was the 22nd, they finally issued the compliance supplement addendum that provided us with guidance on if we needed to do any sort of tests around these COVID or CARES Act grants for any of the fiscal year audits. But then it was determined that it was not needed to wait on these. So that's why we are now turning it in, I guess in January instead of typically November for the 2020 audit.
So I know that Ms. Anderson had to intercede on our behalf, and we greatly appreciate her leadership as our CFO. So then is my understanding that the 20 districts that you all audited also are being submitted 2 months late to the state?
Some were submitted in December, and then obviously there were some districts that didn't have any COVID or CARES Act grant expenditures in the 2020 school year. So those were submitted, those did not get an extension, so those were submitted before 11/15.
All right, I appreciate your explanation for us. The second part of my concern here, Mr. DeMonte, is we are in the practice of receiving the auditor's report perhaps 10 days before this board meeting when we're required to approve it. Board members need ample time in order to review an audit report of 19 schools. And so I would just ask you to keep that in mind if there's an occasion for you to perform our next audit. We need the information well in advance of this meeting. We received it 2 days ago, 2.5 days ago. So it's difficult with all of our agendas are 500 pages in length. So I can't stress enough how important it is for you to get that report, first of all, to the district in a timely manner, but then get it in our hands in plenty of time for us to review it.
Yes, of course.
Any other questions or comments, you all?
Not to him, but just for the record, Stephanie sent out a very nice email today to the schools, and I just want to publicly commend the principals and the school bookkeepers of doing a tremendous job with their Red Book procedures and their internal processes this year. By far, in my 5 years, I do believe this is the best reporting of all of our schools, which is tremendous because we spent some time over the summers working with folks on that. So I'm glad that those lessons are being taken to heart, and they're doing a really nice job out in the buildings, which makes obviously our job a lot easier. It avoids fraud issues and makes things on Stephanie's back end a lot easier.
Yeah, completely agree. It looks like you didn't have any individual findings for any of our schools.
There were, I think, 2 comments, some recommendations on, and they were minor things, but yes, nothing significant.
Okay. Other questions or comments, you all? Well, is there anything you'd like to add, Ms. Anderson?
No, except that it was a challenging year, and because of COVID, and we really appreciated going with the SureLink. I think the schools really liked that as well. It was different for them. I used it last year, but it really provides a nice way to transport information and reduce some of the costs on both our sides.
Excellent, thank you. So unless you have anything further for us regarding this portion of the agenda, Mr. DeMonte, we actually will take action on the audit a little bit later in the agenda.
Okay.
So
Great.
we appreciate your sharing this information during our instructional session.
Not a problem. Thank you all.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, you are next on deck for with the treasurer's report, ma'am.
So the treasurer's report begins on page 106, and this will be for the month of December. So on our first page, we have our cash balances. We've got a beginning balances of $71,253,000 and ending balances of $70,732,000. So we are back in our phase where we're spending more than what we're bringing in. Last month was our big month for property taxes. This month we brought in just $1 million, so that's still a significant amount. But as you can see, our disbursements were a little higher than that. If we look at our food service cash, at the end of this month, it's $1.3 million. Prior year, it was $2.3 million at this time. Our expenditures and our receipts are half of what they were last year, so that is a good sign. The cash is down, but also our expenditures are down, but our revenue is down as well. For the daycare, our balance in cash is $1.6 million. Prior year, it was $3.1 million. Last year, in February, after the daycares had paid staffing bills, we were down to $1.7 million. So we are well below where we were last year. So it is a bit of a concern, something we'll need to get with the daycares on and make sure they got a business plan to go forward with that. Prior year revenue and expenses were typically about $200,000 to $300,000, so you can see that their receipts are just under $50,000, but their expenditures are down as well. One of the good things on this is that we have received some CARES money for the daycare. We got two rounds. First round is done except for the PPE, so now we're working on the second round, and that's going primarily towards salaries, so that has been a tremendous help to them. But it still leaves them in a much less viable position than what they were this time last year. At the bottom of the report, we have our bonded construction fund report, and there's very little activity in that one. On the following page, we've got governmental funds by fund for their cash balances. You can see the difference between the receipts and the total expenditures for the month is about $500,000, with the expenditures being higher. You can also see that the special revenue fund 2 is a negative balance, and we will be requesting reimbursement for those in the month of January. On the following page, we have the historical comparison report of certain accounts. On this first line, general fund revenue, we've got the trend from fiscal 18 through fiscal 21. And you can see that we do have a slight increase for the general fund revenue. And below that, as we do a summary of salaries and benefits, we are slightly below prior year. So that is good news. Last year was an expensive year. Mm-hmm. As we go through the various property taxes and other incomes, the PSC property tax is considerably lower than what it was in prior months or prior years at this time. However, our collections are highest February through April, so I'm hoping that we will see a pickup in that because we are definitely below budget. In the next section, we've got delinquent property taxes, which I did expect would increase, so I increased the budget, but we have already exceeded our budget on our delinquencies, so kind of a good news, bad news situation. Mm-hmm. Motor vehicle tax, we are 50% through the year, and so in the month of December, and so we are slightly ahead of budget, coming in at 52.58% of that. Mm-hmm. Utilities tax, we are slightly behind. Mm-hmm. The SEEK program, something interesting happened in the month of December.
That's one way to put it.
So we are going to see ourselves continually falling behind in this area, but there's a reason for it, and I'll get to it when we get to the expense side of things. On our building revenue and capital outlay fund revenues, we are where we expected based on budget. On the following page, we've got revenues by their different categories. And let's go down to the 3111, the SEEK program. You can see that we are considerably below where we were last year, and you go back a couple, 3 years, and we are below that even. So this particular month, we had a $200,000 drop in our SEEK reimbursement, and that was because of a special deal that KDE gave us. Essentially, there was leftover.
This does not sound special, Stephanie.
It was bad.
It was an accounting nightmare, but the other side of that was worse. They had been talking about doing budget cuts, and I don't know that is completely off the table right now, but they have certainly slowed down their talk about that. And what they discovered was that they had some leftover coronavirus relief fund money that the state had to spend by 12/31. So what they did was they said, use this instead of SEEK. So they gave us this grant, which shows up in Fund 2, so you're not really going to see too much of it. And you're going to get that as a replacement for your SEEK money. So SEEK money's going down. They reduced what we're getting by a month, but in total, we're going to get the same amount. It's just coming from different places. And so in order to make this work, I had to move expenses that were in Fund 1, move them into Fund 2. So it looks a little bizarre, and I don't know if you all have noticed that. I'll point it out to you when we get there. But we did get $2.2 million of SEEK replacement money in the month of December. And then throughout the following months, there will be an equivalent reduction in that funding. So let's go to expenses on page 111. So of that $2.2 million, I took this out of specific places where I felt that it would not lose its identity, so that What they wanted me to do was take it out of salaries, and I felt that if I took it out of salaries, it would look to everybody that our salaries had gone down, and I did not want to give that impression because that's not the situation we're in. So I chose some places where the expenses were either one-time or would be obvious that they were missing. So those areas are in tax collection expenses, property insurance, software, and the major equipment that you all asked about a couple months ago. I wiped out a whole bunch of that.
Okay.
So that's kind of the prelude, and I'll point out where these reductions have been made. First, let's look at salaries. As we look 2020 to 2021, we've got $1 million increase. We go to the benefits section. This is where we have, last year we were paying for those one-time fringe benefit payments of $2.1 million. So our grand total of employee benefits from prior year is much higher. If we took out that 2.1 million from the 5 million that is sitting there, we'd actually have 2.9, and we are at 2.9 this year to date as well. So on this very next line, professional technical services, you can see the tax collection fees. It's a big fat zero. That is not the case, but that is where I moved the money out so that we could offset it against the SEEK grant.
Thank you.
All right, if we go to page 4 of this report, page 114, we've got a number of items at the top of the page. These are insurances. You can see what our costs have been in the prior years, $150,000, $120,000, and you can see our budget out there. And there's very little money in those insurance accounts. So that was another area I pulled from. If we go 2 more pages, on page 116, software supplies, account 0650, our prior year expenses were $700,000. That was very close to what we were again this year. I pulled out $400,000 to cover that. I know that Trey keeps a very detailed log of those expenses, and we will not miss budget on that as we roll things over. And the final place that I took it out of was on page 117 under the property, that very last item, other equipment. I took $500,000 out of there. So these are places where it's one-time cost, or it's going to be very obvious that we're not going to see that reduction in costs again next year. So if we go to the final page and we look at our comparative expenses, and if I look at fiscal 20, we got $39.1 million. If I back out 2.1 in fringes, that gives us $37 million in costs. If we look at fiscal 21, we got $34.8 million, and if I add back in the costs that we took out for SEEK, we get to $37 million. So considering some of the expenses that we have incurred this year, it is good to see that those are flat. Any questions on that?
Questions, board members?
In those
Mr. Keegan?
adjustments, is there any way you can put it in red and for future, if we wanted to go back and see a summary and with an explanation at the bottom of the adjustments of those couple items?
Yeah, you're saying like on each page, 300,000 should really be $700,000? Yeah, I can do that.
Something general, just a note of it for future.
Yeah, you're thinking next year and the year after when it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
Okay,
Could
yeah.
highlight those for us, Stephanie. Red would alarm me, but if you want to just to highlight them.
Maybe yellow.
An asterisk or something?
That'd be great.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Yeah, because you're right. In a year or 2 or 3 or 4, when we're looking at this comparatively, it will lose its identity a little bit.
Yeah.
As we go to the functional report, I just will call out your attention to those places where I've pulled those costs out again. 2311 board costs, 2580 administrative technology, operations of buildings, student transportation, and then that final line item, 4300 architectural. So again, that was $2.2 million of costs that we pulled out and devoted that to SEEK. All right, on page 123, we have the summary of bonding potential. There's no change there. On page 124, we have our balance sheets by fund, if you would like to look at those. And on page 138, we have our income statements by fund. And that concludes the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, and good question, Mr. Kehoe. I appreciate that. Other questions? All right, so motion to approve treasurer's report, please. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. Stephanie, would you walk us through bills and claims, please?
Yes, on page 193, we have our bills and claims. This is a list of the bills and claims since we last met. So our invoice count during that time period was 1,162, compared to same time last year, 1,945.
Wow.
Our, yeah, big difference.
Uh-huh.
And our costs were 8.7, almost 8.8 million, and compared to 13.4 million same time last year. So again, a reduction on this. We are still seeing some project costs come through from Mr. Bohannon's areas, but those costs have been reduced considerably. And that concludes bills and claims.
Questions regarding bills and claims? All right, motion to approve bills and claims, please. Made by Mr. Kehoe, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor? 4-0. Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
All righty, thank you.
Board members, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. The first are from December 14th, a regular board meeting. Questions, corrections, additions? Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 4-0. We had a special called meeting on January 11th, 2020. Corrections or additions?
Are we calling those special called meetings or work sessions?
They have to be special called meetings since we added them to the calendar after the calendar was approved, Mr.
Okay.
Dodson. So, yes.
Okay.
So, motion to approve then, made by Mr. Kehoe and seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. Thank you, everybody. We are ready, Superintendent, for your notice to us of personnel actions, sir.
Pretty standard fare for this time of the year. Really nothing on here that stands out beyond the normal, to be honest with you.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions? All right, we are ready for the consent agenda, and we have items A through F. Your recommendation, sir.
Approve all consent items as presented with the material in your packet.
Motion to approve the consent agenda, please. Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. We are ready for recognition, Superintendent.
So it is wonderful to announce that we are adding 10 more Oldham County teachers to the honors of earning National Board Certification.
Yes.
Oldham County Schools is pleased to announce that 10 teachers earned National Board Certification in December. National Board Certification is a voluntary advanced teacher credential that can take several years to complete. During the process, teachers are reviewed by peers, analyze teaching methods, develop strategies inside and outside the classroom to improve student success. Teachers submit videos and essays as well as student work to show their methods. Finally, they must pass an exam to demonstrate mastery in their chosen content area. Less than 3% of the nation's teachers are nationally board certified, and we are the leader in this region of nationally board certified teachers.
Yes.
This year's class of 2020 National Board Certified teachers include Stephanie Little Cheatham from North Oldham Middle School, Lynn Campbell from the Arvin Education Center, Jennifer Fannin from North Oldham Middle School, Nancy Farmer from Harmony Elementary, Kelly Fiorini from North Oldham Middle School, Ashley Hazelton from Centerfield Elementary, Sharon Jacobs from North Oldham Middle School, Julie Julik from Goshen Elementary, Tangi Kelsey from East Oldham Middle School, and Leah Newberry from Buckner Elementary. Please recognize these outstanding individuals and their efforts to become part of the National Board Certification family.
This is an outstanding accomplishment for this group of teachers, so join me in at least a round of applause, you all. Yes, kudos to every single one of them. We know how hard you all have worked to get here. Let's move along with Superintendent Report number 1, sir.
If we could have Mr. Bohannon, please come up to the podium.
You don't have to take it.
Oh, welcome, Mr. Bohannon.
Yes, he does.
Yes, it is.
Yes, he does.
How are y'all today?
We're good.
Okay, included in your package, you'll see that we have the updated construction report for the month of January, and if y'all remember, this will include, the last one we had was in November, so this will include December and January in these updates. The Oldham County Roof Replacement Project, Area A, the student work is being removed from that wood shop, and they're kind of getting some precious items out from underneath that roof so that we can get started on that as soon as possible, and they were actually going to start today, but obviously that's not possible. So within this week, they will remobilize the crew and get back to work on that portion of the roof on that lower section of both the wood shop and the classrooms directly adjacent to it. And then that will complete the majority of the work for that project. The Buckner Classroom Addition, as you might have seen pulling in here, we have a second story going up. The ICF insulated concrete forms are up on the second floor, and the masonry work continues on the interior walls of the second floor. Below, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing rough ends continue on the lower level at the same time.
Excellent.
The North Oldham Middle School HVAC and refrigeration replacement project has been substantially completed, and the commissioning work continues. I think this week they're working on the final testing and balancing of that and making sure that we have the controls controllable at the annex. South Oldham High School Administrative Addition. As you can see in the images there, we have gym ductworks complete and operational. We have a new parking lot out in front of the school.
Wow.
And the front, the administrative addition is lacking the windows and doors, but other than that, we have the masonry complete on that enclosure, on that, and a roof weather tight. And HVAC ductwork and electrical and plumbing rough ends continue on the first and second floor of the administrative addition, but drywall is starting to go up and being finished as well.
Excellent.
Around back at the gym addition, punch work continues. The East Oldham Middle School Classroom Addition and Roof Replacement Project, we met with the design team this week, and you can see the schedule that we have anticipated there moving forward, and we hope to bring a design review to you all next month for your all's consideration. And the South Oldham High School Phase 2, the fieldhouse renovation and site improvements has been on hold, is going to be recommencing, I guess would be the good word for that. This week, as soon as we get word back from KD that we have approval to spend those capital funds as you all had approved prior. Some of the smaller projects we got going on around the district, the LaGrange MSD classroom restroom renovation has made significant progress for the time that we didn't have students in the building there. And I'll get some pictures for that and get you all updated on that next month. The site improvements at LaGrange, I think Mr. Woosley has emailed me the other day and has noticed that we have a fence out there now separating us and the adjacent property owners.
Yep.
Which should be a huge safety feature.
Awesome.
We also have the access control going on to the operable gate at the lower end of the parking lot that comes down by the playground, so that we'll be able to restrict unauthorized traffic, but allow
Excellent.
our authorized traffic in there to service the school as needed. The baseball fence repair, I think we talked about that a little bit last week. The contractor who we had previously awarded the contract to remove and replace that fence, obviously we had to go ahead and remove it because of the hazardous condition, so he's going to rework that price to exclude the work that we've done ourselves.
Good. And that concludes your report.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow,
Unless there's any questions?
wow. Questions for Mr. Bohannon? Are we okay?
All right.
I've just
Mr.
got one
Kehoe.
question.
Yes, sir.
What was the consideration of putting a picket fence in front of LaGrange versus a standard fence?
That's city property, and that's what they decided to do.
Gotcha. All right,
And,
thank you.
and to that point, because I was going to address that in a different way, I mean, I can't thank Kevin Woosley enough for his continued efforts with the mayor of LaGrange, because the way we initially started that, we thought that was going to be our property. We were going to probably do a different fence at that point. In fact, we did have plans for that, and it just didn't work out that way. And so we did get the pavement done, the concrete done, all those things done. But it wasn't, if it wasn't for the follow-up with Mr. Woosley, I'm not sure that we would have ever gotten a fence. And really, that was one of the biggest things we wanted to have for the safety features for kids and parents being dropped off. So I publicly want to thank Mr. Woosley for doing that, because we couldn't get it done from a school standpoint. There was somebody that's been a lifelong LaGrange person that just kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting, and thankfully, he prevailed. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Woosley. I mean, we have been trying to get this project done for several years.
Well, before my time, but at least 4 years on my watch.
Yes, so I
And-
want to
and while
thank
we're in the-
everybody.
While we're in the process of patting people on the back, I do want to
Yes.
thank the Public Works Department. They were very helpful, easy to work with. And like I said, once we finally got things moving with the larger portions of that project, everything kind of fell into place. So,
Yes, so although it wasn't one of our major projects, it was a major headache to
That's right.
get this project done.
Absolutely.
So thank you,
There's no such thing as a small
everybody.
project.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you all.
Bohannon. Great report. Superintendent report number 2, sir.
All righty, if Ms. Corson would like to come up, we have some consider policy revisions.
Miss Corson, you have been busy. This is several policies here, Miss Corson.
So today these are just the first reading of these policy changes. Nothing too significant. Most of the changes were some cleanup of language or to comport with how we currently, how our current procedures work. Pupil transportation, there was a change in the Kentucky administrative regulation that we had to change our policy to conform with that new policy. So any questions on any of the proposed changes?
So this is our first view of these policy changes. You have some time to continue to consider them, board members, and get your questions answered if you need to contact Ms. Corson.
Yeah,
We
just let me know.
appreciate your effort. Thank you, Ms. Ann.
They'll be back next month.
All right. Superintendent report number 3, sir.
Just can't get enough of Ms. Anderson tonight. Ms. Anderson will come up and talk to you about the working budget.
Yes, she will. Hello again.
Hello again. As we finish fiscal 20, we start fiscal 22. Can you believe it?
No.
All right, so this is regarding the draft budget for fiscal year 22. KDE requires each local board of education to prepare and review a draft budget excluding multi-year funds for the next fiscal year no later than January 31st of this current year. So that's where we are. The draft budget for us is prepared mainly for compliance purposes and provides budget information based on current year operations and some fiscal 22 projected expenditures. So the budget should be viewed just as a basis for beginning discussions related to this. The fiscal 22 draft budget reflects revenues exclusive of on-behalf revenue of $102.106 million, recurring expenditures of $90.144 million, and a contingency of $11.962, which is about 12.7%. Additional significant fiscal 22 changes as compared to fiscal 21 working budget are listed below, but they are not currently included in the munis budget. So item 1, we will consider increases in revenue as we get a little more information. Number 2, of course, we are considering options for merit-type salary increases. The 1% step increase is about $2.2 million. We are still working through the MAG salary updates. Those are about $735,000. It has been confirmed that the CERS contribution rate has gone from 24.06 to 26.95%. That's that 12% increase that we got a pass on last year because of COVID. So that is back in play, about $500,000. New costs that, for you to consider are going to be changes to certified and paraprofessional salaries. I believe we had a preview of those that Mr. Dees presented at a prior time. And increased costs for student intervention due to the NTI during COVID. Some of the carry forward costs that we're anticipating are $800,000 in IT infrastructure upgrades, another $800,000 in interactive classroom refreshes, and $375,000 in staffing continuations, and continuation of CAPA costs of $300,000. Other things that we are considering for the fiscal '22 budget are 6 buses. We need to continue our work on how we're going to fund and get those buses in place. In addition, we've got various HVAC upgrades, AV upgrades, bus security improvements, floor replacements, and pavement and site stormwater repairs, and those total about $1.3 to $1.4 million. So in conclusion, the fiscal '22 draft budget, exclusive of multi-year funds, totals $163.4 million, and you can see the breakdown by fund below. So the recommendation is that you review this draft budget in preparations for discussions related to the completion of the tentative and working budget, and direct the superintendent to continue to revise the budget as more information becomes available.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Anderson. So board members have had multiple discussions regarding our budget and budget process. Any questions at this time, board members? All right, we will keep this for review. Ms. Anderson, appreciate your work. Superintendent, report number 3, sir.
So in front of you in your packet, you have a listing of the 2021-2022 meeting dates and locations. These are regular board meetings and SBDM meetings. You'll note that on this, because when we started the work sessions in January, we wanted to run that for 6 months and go through June and then see what it looked like before we add that again. So you'd follow that same procedure as we did this year if you all want to continue that from June or going into July forward. So these are those dates for next year. They all, once again, fall approximately on the 3rd Monday of the month, and pretty standard or pretty much aligned to what the current calendar looks like.
And this is actually Superintendent Report number 4, my correction. So questions at this time regarding that calendar? All right, we will hang on to this and take action on it next month, sir. Superintendent, are we done with our super reports?
We are.
We are. And we are ready for action item G, sir.
Ms. Anderson, if you'll put your track shoes back on, that is the financial audit.
You could just pull up a chair, Ms. Anderson. This is the moment Mr. DeMonte has been waiting on. Make sure that the board approves the audit.
So this is the audit for fiscal '20,
Yes. And
and my recommendation is that you approve it.
we just had an instructional session regarding the annual audit, and a nice presentation from Mr. Daniel DeMonte representing Barnes Denick. So we appreciate that. And are there any additional questions or comments? Kudos again to our schools for the great outcome. And Superintendent, your recommendation?
Approve the fiscal year 20 audit as given to you.
Motion to approve, please, made by Mr. Dodson and seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 4-0.
Thank you.
Nicely done, Ms. Anderson. Thank you. We also have action item H, sir.
In front of you is a supplemental, and so, like everything else during the COVID year, it's just a catch as catch can and plan the best you possibly can with not always knowing what the future lies. We had a very successful shot clinic last week on Thursday afternoon and all day on Friday, with Friday being a remote learning day for our students because we cannot, nor can others manage of a large district, how to have shots in all these arms while trying to have in class. So knowing that this coming Friday, we are going to do the same, but then we looked ahead in February and we realized that our teacher work date was actually the Friday before the shots. And so what we want to do is move the Friday teacher work day from February 12th, make that now a school day for in-person instruction, we proposed at that time. Make February 19th the new teacher work date, and then obviously on the 26th, we think we'll be remote again as we finish at the shot clinic. This last page of this is, I had Mr. Williams in his typical fashion do a great job running the numbers to where we're trying to balance out the A days and the B days at the secondary level. And if you look at that at the end of it, there are 55 A days and 56 B days. And right now, currently 59 NTI days with the total days of 170, which is our school calendar. So never like to come with late calendar changes, but we feel like this serves the best interest of the district. Instead of having 3 Fridays off in February, we would only have 2 Fridays off, and one of those days is a teacher work day, and so it's better instructionally. Also would like to point out, just for the record, and I was sharing this before the meeting, that with the collaboration between ourselves and the health department, we think this is the least minimally instructive schedule that we could develop. We know that in certain counties, they have not even been able to roll out their SHOT program yet, but they are all intending to do a very similar schedule of ours because they've talked to myself and Mr. Deves. And we also know that some districts that did not have the luxury of having input into their scheduling, some of them are talking where they may need to miss a whole week of instruction due to possible side effects of the second vaccination. So we don't like to miss school when we're in school, but we feel like it's imperative to move this calendar so that we can maximize the days the best we possibly can.
Thank you, Superintendent. Questions or comments?
So we're moving the 12th from the
We'll be in school the 12th.
And then off on the
Move the
19th.
teacher work day to the 19th, which would then be an off day, and we'll do shot clinic that day.
Okay.
And then the following Friday will be the second round of shot clinic for those that did not get it the first go around or the first week. It's basically we had 900 vaccinations provided Thursday and Friday of last week. We'll have 900 provided this week on Thursday, Friday. And then in 30 days or basically a month, we mirror that again. And that way it plans for the worst eventuality if staff do have any type of ill effects from a second round vaccination.
I want to thank all of the district employees that had a hand in developing our schedule. I also want to thank the teachers and staff members who stepped up and got their vaccination or who will this coming week. I think we've had an outstanding turnout for vaccinations. And thirdly, we must thank the health department for giving our teachers and staff a priority so that we could get them vaccinated and continue in-person school. So I think that's all excellent. So your recommendation, sir?
Approve the calendar change as I have recommended.
Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. I think I understand from Mr. Williams, we don't have anybody wishing to address the board for public expression. Board members, please review your information items, the monthly energy usage, and the monthly report from the preschool. And at this time...
Before we go there, I'd like to it's not on the agenda, but I would like to make a little bit of an announcement.
Okay, fine.
January across the state of Kentucky is Board Recognition Month. And if anybody's checked our website, they have your glorious pictures on the website and stating things about you. But I personally want to take this time in a public meeting that's being live streamed to thank the board for tremendous service throughout an extremely challenging year. This board is a very seasoned board. When you look at Mr. Kehoe sitting here tonight, is probably with 3 years is our least experience, but not every board has the luxury of having the experience that the Oldham County Board does. And so I want to thank you on behalf of all the teachers, the staff, and all the families for the wonderful service that you all provide every single day. This is more than just a monthly meeting or a bi-monthly meeting. It's phone calls, it's emails, it's out in the public doing what is best for kids. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure, I think I speak for the board, to serve in Oldham County with such an amazing staff and amazing families and students. So now, at this time, we need to go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101C to discuss 2 litigation matters pertaining to student injuries and 1 special education matter. The board needs to go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101C to discuss litigation preparation, the public disclosure of which would jeopardize the board's position. So motion to go into executive session, please. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. Thank you, everybody.